Commander Marcus Cole had seen many terrible things in his life. He had fought in 3 wars between the stars. He had watched friends die in the cold darkness of space. He had led rescue missions into dying star systems where the heat would melt steel. Through all of this, he had never begged for his life. He had never felt truly broken, but standing on the slave platform of Valenthor Prime, with his wrists locked in glowing energy cuffs and his military uniform torn away, Marcus felt something he had never felt before. He felt like he was nothing. The Valenthi Empire had captured his ship near the edge of known space. His crew had fought hard. They had fought until the last breath. But the Valanthi were too powerful, too advanced. Now his crew was dead, and Marcus was alone. He was no longer a commander. He was no longer a soldier. He was merchandise. He was a thing to be sold. The auction hall was enormous. The walls glowed with soft blue light that came from living plants built into the structure. Hundreds of aliens from dozens of different species filled the seats below the platform. They looked up at Marcus with curious eyes. Some looked hungry. Some looked bored. None looked at him like he was a person. Humans were rare this far from Earth. Most species in this part of the galaxy has never seen one. To them, Marcus was exotic. He was interesting. He was a collector's item. The auctioneer, a tall creature with gray skin and too many arms, began calling out numbers. Bids came from all directions. Marcus stared straight ahead. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing his fear. He would not give them his dignity. Even if they had taken everything else, then the room went silent. Marcus felt the change before he understood it. The air itself seemed to grow heavy. The bidding stopped. Every alien in the room turned toward the main entrance. She walked in like she owned the universe. And in many ways, she did. Queen Cirith Valkyra was 8 feet tall. Her skin was like polished black stone, smooth and perfect. She had 4 eyes that glowed with violet light, and they saw everything. She moved through the crowd without hurry. She did not need to hurry. She was the absolute ruler of 12 star systems. Billions of lives bent to her will. No one in this room would dare to stand in her path. Behind her walked her personal guards. They were massive warriors in armor that seemed to absorb light. Each one could probably kill everyone in this room without breaking a sweat, but Marcus barely noticed the guards. His eyes were fixed on the small figure walking beside the queen. A child. She was small, even by human standards. She could not have been more than 6 years old by Valenthia counting. Her skin was the same polished black as her mother's, but softer somehow. Less hard. Her 4 eyes were wide and bright with curiosity. She held on to her mother's flowing robes with one tiny hand. Looking around the auction hall like she had never seen such a place before, she probably had not. This was no place for a princess. The child's eyes found Marcus on the platform. She stared at him. Not with disgust like the others. Not with hunger or boredom. She stared at him with pure, innocent fascination. Like he was a puzzle she wanted to solve. Like he was interesting in a way that had nothing to do with buying or selling. Marcus felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. It had been so long since he felt it. Hope. Tiny and fragile, but there. The queen raised one elegant hand. The auctioneer immediately stopped talking. Everyone in the room held their breath. "I will take the human," the queen said. Her voice was like music made of ice. Beautiful and cold, no one dared to bid against her. The auction was over in seconds. As the guards came to collect him, Marcus allowed himself one last look at the child. She was still watching him. She raised her small hand and waved. It was such a simple gesture. Such a human gesture. Marcus did not know if Valenthi children normally waved, or if she had seen it somewhere and copied it. It did not matter. For reasons he could not explain, that small wave felt like the first kind thing anyone had done for him in months. The guards led Marcus through endless hallways of the royal transport ship. The walls were alive with the same glowing plants as the auction hall. Everything about the Valanthis seemed to blend technology and nature in ways humans had never imagined. It was beautiful. It was alien. It was his prison now. They put him in a holding cell that was nicer than most hotel rooms on Earth. There was a bed that adjusted to his body. There was a window that showed the stars rushing past. There was even a small bathroom with running water, but there was no door handle on the inside. No way out. Marcus sat on the bed and stared at the stars. He thought about Earth. He thought about his wife, who had died in the colony attacks 5 years ago. He thought about his daughter, who had been with her mother when the bombs fell. He had joined the military after losing them. He had thrown himself into danger because he had nothing left to lose. He had secretly hoped that each mission would be his last. Now he was a slave to an alien queen. He would probably live for many more years. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. But as the ship carried him toward his new life, Marcus kept thinking about the little princess. About her curious eyes and her tiny wave. He did not know why she had been at the auction. He did not know why she had looked at him the way she did. He only knew that for one brief moment. An alien child had seen him as something more than property. And in the darkness of his situation, that small light was enough to keep him going. He did not know that the child would change his life completely. He did not know that his life would change hers in return. He did not know that their meeting would eventually shake the foundations of an empire. All he knew was that he was alive. And for the first time in years, some small part of him was glad about that. The stars rushed past his window, carrying him into an unknown future. And somewhere on this ship, a little princess was probably asking her mother 100 questions about the strange human with only 2 eyes. Their story was just beginning. 3 months passed in the royal palace of Valenthor Prime. Marcus learned many things during this time. He learned that slaves in the Valanthi Empire were expected to be invisible. They moved through the palace like shadows. They did not speak unless someone spoke to them first. They did not look up. They did not make eye contact with anyone who was free. They existed only to serve. Breaking these rules meant death. The Valanthi did not believe in second chances for slaves. Marcus learned to walk with his head down. He learned to keep his eyes on the floor. He learned to answer only when asked a direct question. He cleaned floors. He carried heavy things. He did whatever task was given to him without complaint. But there was one thing he could not control. The princess kept finding him. Aleth was her name. The queen's only child. The heir to 12 star systems. And for some reason that no one could understand, she was fascinated by the human slave. She would escape from her tutors at least twice a week. The royal teachers would search the palace in panic, and they would always find her in the same place, the servants' quarters. Talking to Marcus. The first time it happened, Marcus had been terrified. Speaking to royalty without permission was a death sentence. He had kept his head down and refused to answer her questions. He had hoped she would get bored and leave. She did not leave. She sat down on the floor next to him and started talking anyway. "Why do you only have 2 eyes?" she asked. "Does the world look different with only 2? My mother says humans are very strange. She says you come from a planet with only 1 sun. How do you know when it is daytime if there is only 1 sun? Do you have a family? Do you have a daughter?" "I do not have any brothers or sisters. Mother says I do not need them because I will be queen someday. But I think it would be nice to have someone to play with." She talked for an hour without stopping. Marcus said nothing. When she finally left, he was shaking with fear. But she came back the next day. And the day after that, and the day after that, slowly Marcus began to understand something. Aleth was lonely. She was the princess of a great empire, surrounded by servants and guards and teachers every moment of her life. But none of them talked to her like a person. They talked to her like a future queen. They were careful and formal and afraid of making mistakes. Marcus was a slave. He was beneath her in every possible way, and maybe that was why she felt safe with him. He was the only one who had nothing to gain or lose by being honest. After 2 weeks, he started answering her questions. He told her about Earth. He described the blue oceans that covered most of the planet. He told her about mountains that touched the clouds and forests that stretched for thousands of miles. He told her about rain, which made her laugh because Valenthor Prime had no liquid water on its surface. He told her about snow and ice and the way the sky changed colors when the sun went down. She listened to everything like he was describing magic. "Did you have a daughter?" she asked one day. Marcus was quiet for a long time. "Yes," he finally said. "Her name was Emma. She would have been about your age now." "Where is she?" "She died a long time ago." Lith's 4 eyes went wide with sadness. She reached out and took his hand. Her small fingers were cool against his skin. "I am sorry," she said. "That is very sad." It was such a simple thing. A child holding his hand. But Marcus felt tears in his eyes for the first time in years. He turned away so she would not see him cry. The months continued. Their secret meetings became a regular thing. The palace staff knew about it, of course. They knew everything. But no one reported it to the queen. Perhaps they thought it was harmless. Perhaps they were curious to see what would happen. Perhaps some of them had children too, and understood why a little girl needed a friend. Then came the day that changed everything. A diplomatic ship arrived from the Kreth Dominion. The Kreth were ancient enemies of the Valanthi. They had fought terrible wars that killed billions on both sides. But 50 years ago, they had signed a peace treaty. The two empires were not friends. They were no longer trying to destroy each other. Lord Vorin Kreth led the diplomatic mission. He was a commander of high rank, known throughout the galaxy for one thing above all else: cruelty. He enjoyed causing pain. He enjoyed watching others suffer. The peace treaty protected him because killing a Kreth diplomat would start another war. The queen held a great feast to welcome the visitors. All the noble houses attended. Hundreds of Valanthi and Kreth sat together in the grand hall. Eating and drinking and pretending to be friendly, Marcus was there as a servant. He carried trays of food and kept his eyes down. He tried to stay invisible. Princess Alith was there too, sitting beside her mother at the high table. She was too young for such events, but the queen wanted to show off her heir. It was a political statement. Everything was going smoothly until Alith reached for her cup. Her small arm knocked over a container of ceremonial wine. The purple liquid splashed across the table and onto Lord Vorin's robes. The entire hall went silent. Vorin stood slowly. His face was a mask of rage. The Kreth had many strange laws. One of them said that any insult during a diplomatic ceremony could be answered with physical punishment. The peace treaty forced the Valanthi to honor Kreth law during formal events. Queen. Cirith gripped her throne until her knuckles turned white. Her guards moved forward, then stopped. She could not intervene. If she broke the treaty, millions would die in the war that followed. Vorin raised his clawed hand above Elith's head. The little princess stared up at him with pure terror in her eyes. Marcus did not think. He did not plan. He simply moved. He crossed the hall in 5 quick steps. He dropped to his knees between Vorin and the child, and he spoke the words that slaves used when accepting punishment for another. "The debt transfers to me." The hall erupted in whispers. A slave had spoken without permission. A slave had interfered with royal business. A slave had invoked ancient law that most people had forgotten existed. Vorin looked down at Marcus with new interest. His rage slowly changed into something worse. Amusement. You would take her punishment, human. Every part of it. Marcus looked back at Alith. Her small face was wet with tears. She looked so much like Emma in that moment. So frightened, so small, so innocent. He thought about his daughter, buried on a world that no longer existed. He thought about all the times he wished he could have protected her. All the times he arrived too late. Not this time. "Every strike," Marcus said. "Every blow. I accept it all." Vorin's smile grew wider. It was the smile of a predator who had just found better prey. "Then we shall begin." What happened next was not a simple beating. The Kreth did not believe in simple punishments. They had turned cruelty into an art form. They had studied pain the way humans studied music. They knew exactly how to break a person down piece by piece. Lord Vorin took his time. The guards cleared a space in the center of the grand hall. Every noble, every servant, every guard was forced to watch. This was political theater. This was a message. This was a Kreth showing the Valanthi that they were still the masters of suffering. Marcus knelt in the center of the floor. He kept his back straight. He focused on breathing. He had been trained to handle pain. Every soldier learned that. But nothing in his training had prepared him for this. The first blow knocked him forward. His hands hit the cold stone floor. Before he could catch his breath, the second blow came, then the third, then the fourth. Vorin used no weapon. He used his natural claws, which were harder than steel and sharper than any knife. Marcus did not count the blows after the first 20. There was no point. The numbers stopped meaning anything. Pain became his entire world. There was nothing else. No past, no future. Just endless burning agony that seemed to tear his body apart. He felt his skin split open. He felt bones crack under the pressure. He tasted blood in his mouth and felt it running down his back. But he did not fall. He did not collapse. Every time his body wanted to give up, he forced himself back to his knees. He did not make a sound for the first hour. Soldiers were trained to stay silent under torture. It was a matter of pride. A matter of will. Marcus held on to that training with everything he had when he finally screamed. It was the kind of sound that made everyone in the hall look away. It was raw and broken and terrible. It was the sound of a human being pushed past every limit. Guards who had killed hundreds in battle closed their eyes. Noble ladies covered their ears. Servants wept silently into their hands, but Marcus did not stop. Every time he fell, he pushed himself back up. His arms shook. His vision blurred. Blood pooled beneath him on the stone floor. Yet he returned to his knees again and again. He was not doing this for pride anymore. He was not doing it for honor or courage or any noble reason. He was doing it because somewhere behind him, a little girl was watching. A little girl who would have to live with this memory for the rest of her life. He would not let her see him break. He would not let her last image of him be a man who gave up. He would show her that some things were worth suffering for. He would show her that love was stronger than pain. Princess Aleth had been pulled to her mother's side. The queen held her close, but she could not shield her from what was happening. Valanthi law required that everyone witness punishments. There were no exceptions, not even for children. Aleth was crying. Not the scared crying from before. This was different. This was grief. This was guilt. This was watching someone suffer because of something she had done. Even though it was an accident, she buried her face in her mother's robes. "Make it stop," she begged. "Mother, please make it stop." Queen Cirith said nothing. Her face was like stone. Her 4 eyes never left the scene in front of her. She had ruled for 60 cycles. She had seen courage in battle many times. She had seen soldiers fight to the death for causes they believed in. She had seen loyalty that was bought with gold and power. She had seen devotion that was bred into bloodlines over hundreds of generations. But she had never seen anything like this. This human had no reason to do what he was doing. He was a slave. Aleth was not his child. The Valanthi Empire had taken everything from him. His ship, his crew, his freedom, his dignity. They had given him nothing but pain and servitude, and yet he knelt there, absorbing punishment that should have killed him 10 times over, simply to protect a little girl he had known for 3 months. He was not performing for the crowd. He was not calculating any advantage. There was no trick, no scheme, no hidden plan. He was simply protecting. With nothing to gain and everything to lose, Vorin struck again and again. 2 hours passed. Then 3. The Creth Lord was breathing hard now. Sweat dripped from his face. Even his endurance had limits. Finally, he stopped. He looked down at the broken human on the floor. Marcus was still conscious. Barely. His body was destroyed in ways that seemed impossible to survive. But his eyes were still open. And those eyes were still fixed on the spot where Aleth stood with her mother. "Remarkable," Vorin said quietly. It was not admiration. It was the way a scientist might look at an interesting specimen. "I have never seen a human last so long. Your species is full of surprises." He turned and walked back to his seat. The punishment was over. Marcus stayed on his knees for 3 more seconds. He wanted to say something. He wanted to tell Aleth that it was okay, that he did not blame her, that she had done nothing wrong. but his body finally gave out. He collapsed forward onto the bloody stone and did not move. The Kreth diplomatic party left that same night. Their visit had been spoiled, not by what Vorin had done, but by the questions his own people were now asking. They had watched a human endure the worst the Kreth could offer. They had watched him refuse to break. And they were wondering what kind of species could produce such beings. In the grand hall, servants rushed to Marcus's side. The Queen's voice cut through the chaos. "Take him to the Royal Medical Wing. Tell the physicians to save his life. I do not care what it costs." Her advisors looked at her in shock. The Royal Medical Wing was for the Queen's family only. No slave had ever been treated there. "Your Majesty," one of them began. "He is just a—" The Queen turned to look at him. The advisor fell silent immediately. He had never seen such an expression on her face before. Said save his life. Her voice was cold enough to freeze stars. Now they carried Marcus away. The grand hall emptied slowly. The feast was over. No one was hungry anymore. Queen Cirith stayed in the hall long after everyone else had left. She stood in the center of the room, looking at the blood that still stained the floor. Her daughter had fallen asleep in a servant's arms, exhausted from crying. The Queen of 12-Star Systems stood alone in the silence. And for the first time since she was a child, she did not know what to think. Everything she believed about humans, about slaves, about strength and weakness and worth, had been shattered by a single act of impossible courage. She did not understand why he had done it. She needed to understand. She turned and walked toward the medical wing. Marcus healed slowly. The Valanthi had medical technology far beyond anything humans had ever developed. They could regrow organs. They could repair broken bones in hours. They could heal wounds that should have been fatal, but even their technology had limits. The damage Vorin had done was extreme. The physicians worked on Marcus for 3 days without rest. They used every technique they knew. They pushed their machines to the breaking point. He survived. Barely. The Queen visited him on the 4th day. She came alone, without guards or servants. She wore simple clothes instead of her royal robes. She looked almost like a normal person. Marcus was awake but weak. He could barely lift his head when she entered. His body was wrapped in healing wraps that glowed with soft blue light. The physician said he would recover fully, but it would take months. The Queen sat in a chair beside his bed. She did not speak for a long time. She just looked at him with her 4 violet eyes. "Why?" she finally asked. Marcus tried to focus on her face. "Why what? Why did you do it? You owe us nothing. We took everything from you. Your ship, your crew, your freedom. We made you property. We treated you like an animal." Her voice was calm, but there was something beneath the surface. Something that sounded almost like confusion. "Yet you nearly died to protect my daughter. I need to understand why." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Speaking was difficult. Everything was difficult. "Where I come from," he said slowly, "we have a saying. The measure of a person is not what they do when everyone is watching. It is what they do when they think no one will remember." The Queen frowned, but everyone was watching. "The entire court saw what you did." "I was not thinking about them." Marcus met her eyes. It was probably disrespectful for a slave to look directly at a queen, but he was too tired to care. "I was thinking about Alith. I was thinking about a little girl who would have to live with seeing herself as the reason someone was hurt. I did not want her to carry that weight." The Queen was silent again. Her hands rested in her lap. For once, she did not look like an empress who ruled billions. She looked like a mother trying to understand something impossible. "You thought about her feelings?" she said. "In that moment, when you knew you would suffer terribly, you thought about how she would feel, yes. Why?" Marcus closed his eyes. He saw Emma's face in his memory, small and smiling and full of life. "I had a daughter once. She died before I could protect her. I think about her every day. I wonder if things could have been different. I wonder if I could have saved her if I had been there." Opened his eyes again. "When I saw Vorin raise his hand over Alith, I did not see a princess. I saw a child. A scared little girl who reminded me of everything I lost. And I decided that this time I would be there. This time, I would not fail. The queen stood up suddenly. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Her back was straight and her shoulders were tense. I have ruled for 60 cycles, she said without turning around. I have seen every kind of loyalty. Soldiers who fought for glory. Servants who obeyed out of fear. Nobles who served because they wanted power. Every act of sacrifice I have ever witnessed had a reason behind it. A calculation. A benefit. She turned to face him. But you gained nothing from what you did. You are still a slave. Aleth is still a princess. Nothing changed for you. You simply suffered. For nothing. Not for nothing, Marcus said. For her. The queen stared at him for a long moment. Then she left without another word. But she came back the next night. And the night after that, and the night after that, the visits became regular. Late at night, when the palace was quiet, the queen would slip into the medical wing alone. She asked Marcus questions about humans, about Earth, about human history and culture and beliefs. She learned about war. Humans had fought each other constantly throughout their history. Terrible wars that killed millions. Wars over land and resources and ideas. But she also learned about what happened after wars. Humans rebuilt. Humans forgave. Humans moved forward. She learned about hospitals. Humans built places specifically to help sick and injured people. Not just their own people. They helped strangers. They helped enemies. They had doctors who promised to help anyone who needed it, regardless of who they were. She learned about firefighters. Humans who ran into burning buildings to save strangers, not for money, not for glory, simply because someone needed help. She learned about adoption. Humans who took other people's children and raised them as their own, not through conquest or political arrangement, through choice, through love. This is impossible, she said one night. No species behaves this way. Self-sacrifice, without benefit, goes against every law of nature. Evolution should have eliminated such behavior millions of years ago. Marcus smiled weakly. Maybe that is what makes humans different. We do impossible things sometimes. We love people we have never met. We die for causes we will never see completed. We plant trees whose shade we will never sit in. The queen sat very still. Something was changing inside her. Marcus could see it in her eyes. A foundation that had supported her entire worldview was beginning to crack. Meanwhile, Leth visited every day without fail. She brought Marcus gifts from around the palace. Strange flowers that glowed in the dark. Books written in languages he could not read. Sweet foods from the royal kitchen. She sat beside his bed for hours, talking about everything and nothing. I told Mother you were my friend, she said one afternoon. She did not get angry. I think she likes you now. She talks about you sometimes. She asks questions about humans. She has never been so interested in anything before. Marcus laughed softly. Laughing still hurt, but it was a good pain. Your mother is a remarkable woman, little one. She is the queen, Aleth said proudly. She is the most remarkable woman in the whole empire. I believe that Aleth was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question Marcus had been expecting. Marcus, will you stay with us forever? Please. He reached out and touched her small hand. Slaves do not get to choose where they stay. That is not how it works, and I will make Mother change the rules. She is the queen. She can change any rules she wants. Ow. Marcus smiled sadly. Some rules are bigger than queens, little one. Aleth shook her head firmly. No, there are no rules bigger than my mother. You will see. She left with her usual confidence. Marcus watched her go and shook his head slowly. Children were so certain about everything. They did not understand how the world worked. But as the weeks passed and his body healed, Marcus began to wonder. The queen's visits grew longer. Her questions grew deeper. She looked at him differently now, not like a queen looking at a slave. Like one person looking at another, something was changing in the palace. Something was changing in the empire. And somehow, impossibly, it all seemed to center on a broken human soldier who would simply refuse. To let a little girl get hurt, the universe was about to be surprised. The Grand Hall of Velanther Prime had not seen such an assembly in 300 cycles. Every noble house had sent their highest representatives. Every allied star system had ambassadors present. Scholars, military commanders, religious leaders, and merchant princes filled the massive room from wall to wall. No one knew why the queen had called this meeting. The announcement had come suddenly, with no explanation. Rumors spread through the empire like fire. War was coming. A new alliance was forming. The queen was sick. The queen was dying. Everyone had theories. No one had answers. Queen Cirith entered the hall in full ceremonial dress. Her robes flowed behind her like liquid shadow. The crown of 12 stars sat upon her head, its ancient gems catching the light. She looked exactly like what she was, the most powerful ruler in this part of the galaxy. But she was not alone. Princess Aleth walked beside her. This was normal. The heir often appeared at important events. What was not normal was the third figure. A human man walked on the other side of the princess. He was not dressed as a slave. He wore simple but fine clothing. He walked with his head up. He held the princess's hand. The entire hall went silent. Hundreds of aliens stared in complete shock. The queen took her place on the raised platform at the front of the hall. Aleth and Marcus stood beside her. "I have called this assembly," the queen announced, "to address matters of law, tradition, and truth." No one made a sound. No one breathed. 6 months ago, a human performed an act that our oldest laws recognize as the highest form of service. He willingly sacrificed himself to protect another. He accepted punishment that should have killed him, simply to spare my daughter from harm. The queen's voice rang through the hall like a bell. By the ancient codes that came before my bloodline, such an act demands recognition. It demands elevation. The murmurs began. Nobles whispered to each other. This was unprecedented. But I am not here merely to follow old law. The queen's voice grew harder. I am here to ask questions that our civilization has avoided for thousands of years. She paused. Every eye in the room was fixed on her. We practice slavery because we can. Because we are strong and others are weak. Because we tell ourselves that other species are less than us. We look at beings like this human and see property. We see tools. We see things to be used and thrown away. She turned to look at Marcus. This human taught my daughter kindness by example. He protected her with his body. He asked for nothing in return. Not even acknowledgement. He did this while we called him property. While we treated him as less than an animal. Her 4 eyes swept across the assembly. Tell me, which of us has demonstrated greater civilization? Which of us has shown true strength? The empire that enslaves millions? Or the slave who gave everything to protect a child that was not his? The silence was absolute. No one had ever heard a Valenthi ruler speak this way. I am formally ending the practice of slavery within the Valenthi Empire. From this moment forward, no being of any species may be owned by another. All current slaves will be freed. All slave markets will be closed. This is not a suggestion. This is law. The hall exploded. Noble houses shouted in outrage. Economists screamed about economic collapse. Military advisors warned of rebellion and chaos. 300 cycles of tradition and profit were being destroyed with a single declaration. The queen let them rage for exactly 30 seconds. Then she activated the ancient compliance field built into the throne. Every being in the hall froze in place, unable to move or speak. This is not a debate, the queen said into the sudden silence. This is a declaration. You will obey, or you will be removed from power. Those are your only choices. She deactivated the field. No one spoke. No one dared. The queen turned to face Marcus directly. Her voice softened in a way that the assembly had never heard before. Marcus Cole of Earth, I offer you a choice that no Valanthi has ever offered a human. Stay with us. Not as a slave. Not as a servant. As a guest of the throne. As an advisor to the crown. She paused. Something flickered in her eyes. Something that looked almost vulnerable. As someone I would like to know better. Someone I believe has much to teach us. Someone who has already changed everything I thought I knew about the universe. Let's squeezed Marcus's hand tightly. Her 4 eyes were bright with hope and tears. Please stay, she whispered. Please. Marcus looked at the little girl who had reminded him of everything he had lost. He looked at the queen who was tearing apart her own empire because a broken human had made her question everything. He looked at the assembled nobles, frozen in shock. Their world changing around them. He thought about Earth. About the home he would probably never see again. About the graves he had left behind. About all the years he had spent wishing for death. He thought about Emma. About how she would have loved Alith. About how she would have been so proud of what he had done. I have one condition, he said. The queen raised an eyebrow. Name it. Somewhere in this palace, there is a garden. Alice showed it to me once. I would like permission to plant something there. A tree from Earth. We call it an oak. It grows very slowly. It takes hundreds of years to reach its full size. He took a deep breath. His voice shook slightly. On Earth, we plant oak trees as a promise. A promise that we believe in a future we will never see. That we care about people who have not been born yet. That some things are worth doing, even if we will not live to enjoy them. He looked at Alith. Then, at the queen. I would like to plant that promise here. In this place. For the future, Queen Cirith smiled. It was a real smile. The first one her court had ever seen. It transformed her face completely. She looked almost human in that moment. Then we will plant it together, she said. The assembly ended in chaos. Nobles fled to their homes to figure out what the new laws meant for them. Economists began calculating the cost of freedom. Military commanders started planning for protests that might never come. But in the royal gardens, 3 figures stood together in the moonlight. A queen, a princess, and a human who had been a slave just hours before. They planted a small oak seedling in the foreign soil. It looked tiny and fragile among the alien plants. It might not survive. It was a tree from another world, trying to grow in a place it was never meant to be. But Marcus had hope for it. He had hope for a lot of things now. Alith fell asleep in his arms as the moons rose. The queen stood beside him, watching her daughter rest peacefully for the first time in months. What happens now? Marcus asked quietly. I do not know, the queen admitted. Everything changes. The empire will resist. There will be problems, possibly even fighting. The road ahead will be difficult. Are you afraid? She thought about it for a moment. No, I think I am excited. For the first time in 60 cycles, I am doing something I truly believe in. Something that matters beyond politics and power. She looked at him. You did that? You showed me that there was another way to live. Marcus shook his head. I just protected a little girl. Anyone would have done the same. No. A queen's voice was firm. They would not. That is what makes you remarkable. That is what makes humans remarkable. You truly believe that anyone would sacrifice themselves for a stranger's child, and because you believe it, you make it true. They stood in silence for a long time, watching the stars wheel overhead. Years later, historians would write about this night. They would call it the beginning of the Human-Volante Alliance. They would describe Queen Cirith's reforms in great detail. They would celebrate Princess Alith's eventual reign as the Bridge Empress, the ruler who connected to civilizations. But in the royal gardens, none of that mattered yet. All that mattered was a sleeping child, a growing tree, and 2 people from different worlds who had found something precious in each other. Marcus had lost his home. He had lost his family. He had lost everything that once defined him. But standing in that garden, holding the princess he had nearly died to protect, watching the queen who had changed her empire for him, he realized something. He had found something new. Something worth living for. Something worth believing in. He had found purpose. And somewhere he was sure Emma was smiling.